few years ago. He's also traveling the world seemingly with this girl who, there's no proof it's his girlfriend, but the amount of time they spend together seemingly, I don't know, man, the signs are there. They're either best friends or they're in a relationship. But Chris's life is not, it's not the pit of despair people assumed it would be when he got out of jail. And honestly, this is like the most normal Chris's life has been in a long time now. I'm saying all this, and in a little bit, it's going to go completely off the rails, but, it's wild to me, because I'm wondering, are they just living in that place that Chris was at for the longest time once he got out of jail, the other house in Virginia? Are they back at Branchland Court with Barb? Because I'm pretty sure legally Chris can do that. But yeah, Chris is back in Virginia, and he's also back on his grind with trying to sell shit, because he's got these new Sonichu and Rosechu plushies for sale. Now, let me just say something. I always tell people, don't buy anything from Chris. This is for a multitude of reasons, but the number one being, what he did to his mom, but number two being the bad luck that comes with it. If you own a Chris Chan product, bad luck is just going to swiftly come find you. But I need to talk about these things, because if they were just normal plushies, that'd be creepy enough knowing they were made from the hands of Chris, right? But what makes it so much worse is that he's voicing them. So, like imagine, right? You have this Sonichu plushie sitting in your bed, and in the middle of the night, you accidentally roll over, and all you hear is "Zapple to the extreme" or some shit like that. Like your eyes would just bolt open. You'd be like, "Holy shit, is Chris Chan in my bed?" And then you realize quickly, no, it's just the Rosechu plushie. I only thought that because Chris's impressions of Rosechu and Sonichu are just his voice, because he's never been good at impressions, but he always demanded he did the voices anyway. And that's exactly what he's doing here with his new plushie line. I also think it's very important to note that unlike Nova Online, Chris has, dramatically slimmed down. Chris looks, he looks in better shape than he has in years, so good on Chris for that one, I gotta say. I brought it up earlier. Maybe Flutter is changing something to him. Maybe these Praetor people are are doing right by Chris. They're getting him on the right path of life, He's getting in shape physically. Maybe they're helping him mentally. No matter what, Chris is becoming a changed man, a better man. A man who doesn't do stuff to his mom. And a man who actually works hard for his money and thinks straight with a head on his shoulders. I say all that right before reading the batshit lunacy we're about to read, because oh my god, I can't believe that even for 1 second I thought, man, maybe Chris is doing a little bit better. Maybe he's trying to get attuned to a normal life. But no, he's still firmly entrenched into the Sonichu shit, the pony world, the idea of him being God, and this little blog post he made. You can read all up on the wiki. It'll be linked in the description below. Because without the quickie, there's no way you'd be able to keep up on all these Chris Chan topics, especially a post as fucking crazy as this. I've said this a million times, and I'm gonna say it for one more, that Chris is somebody that I've never seen changing out of the way that he is. And after reading a post like this, there's no way you're gonna have, anything else but that idea too. Because, you can't even imagine him just walking normally around town with Flutter, right? Like that picture of them in the pet store. Because it's never going to be like, wow, Chris, look at this kitten. And Chris going, wow, honey, I don't do a good Chris impression, but wow, we should get that. We should get that kitten. It's more like, wow, honey, you see that kitten? Well, they say you can't be left alone. That could be a hassle. And Chris is like, yeah, you know what's the hassle? Evil Power Rangers. What do you mean, evil fucking Power Rangers, Flutter. The shit that I'm dealing with in football right now is so much more than your kitten-laden nonsense I'm dealing with over the years. And I know that sounds like it's just a shitty joke, but it's reality. That's really the type of shit Chris is probably just spewing out and thinking in his mind all day. It's always been like that. He's always had, a love of fictional characters. Of course, you can look at Sonichu and see exactly that. But it's gotten so bad that he now wants it to be some real thing. But even in the past, in his younger years, he admitted that Sonichu and this whole world of his was all a make-believe thing. Not anymore, because he wants you to believe it's real. And this post, after reading all this, we'll see if you believe it's real or not. So this is called the Autobots of Quickville, and from what I can gather just from skimming through it, Chris is talking about everybody who helps his little world coexist. The city and nation of Quickville has a great number of defenses and heroes who protect it and nearby, one of which is the Autobots of Quickville appointed by Optimus Prime himself. Let's go back to the year 1993 when Robert Franklin Chandler Jr. was inducted as mayor, and during that time, Chris and Barbara had moved to Midlothian, Virginia, the better educations. Chris has a lot of spelling mistakes and stuff, and I'm going to try to correct him when I can. Other times he's going to catch me off guard like he does right there. But yeah, Chris is kind of giving a little rundown of his life. As of right now, I mean, him and Bob moving to Midlothian, I'm pretty sure that was what happened. Not him and Barbara, but what he's describing here is what apparently happened in his little role when Bob was inducted as mayor of Quickville. So just take that for what you will. Of course, Bob's the fucking mayor because it always has to be someone in Chris's life or Chris himself who's like the higher power or the big kahuna. Between both Robert and Magichan Sonichu, they knew the facts that Chris was to be earnestly, physically, and magically trained with the psychic powers. In the years not long from then, when Chris and I would become awakened of our powers and abilities, not just the city of Quickville, but the entire state of Virginia would become a popular target of supervillains and foes. So he's trying to give you a bit of a history lesson, saying that his dad and Magichan Sonichu, they knew that Chris was the one. They knew that Chris was up next, that when all was said and done, he had to be the one to take it to the evil villains and all that. And basically, it's always got to be him. Like I said, it couldn't be anybody else. Chris was always the chosen one, and that's just that. You're seeing that all happen in real time today when he's telling it right to your face. I mean, you're not seeing it, but he's telling you it, so you better fucking believe it. As early as 1980, Magichan personally trained and evolved a lot of Alakazams and other psychic and various Pokemon for initial defenses and evolved reinforcements. He had also selected and trained a number of psychic and fairy types of special and regular Sonichus and Rosechus, with increasing numbers of the species after the Chaos Rainbow of February 1st, 2003. These over-level, hyper-trained, and mega-evolvable Pokemon were the earliest defense groups. Robert also contacted Optimus Prime of the Autobots and inquired of any able Autobots to help defend the city. Fortunately, a team of 5 Cybertronian Autobots had been personally designated, I think he means, manifested and trained to Voyager ranks, even though most of them were deluxe blast bots by Autobot Chris Chan herself and her partner Rungop, as well as the links with the ancients, histories, and wisdom for Rungop. Okay, there's going to be so many characters introduced here that I feel like Rungop is going to be just the bottom of the barrel, but let's keep it going. More on their story later. Oh, thank God. There's a lot. There's a lot on this. I mean, trust me. I'm looking at the screen right now, and there's nothing but words, so I'm guaranteed we're going to hear about that later, no doubt. The alliance with the Autobots was made. Also, a special project made on Cybertron and imported a set of 5 combining vehicles that were piloted by Quickville's team of Power Ranters to combine kaiju-sized threats. The barterings and alignments were made in 1993. The Zords were completed by 1995. With upgrades, since go-karts were prototypically fragile, they were no longer simply go-karts, and the team led by Christian, of course, Chris is the fucking leader, from 1995 to 2000, was formed as Crash Dummy had gathered his troops and targeted Virginia in mid-late 1995. The psychic tower that hovers over the Quickville Police Department had been erected in 1995, and the inside could only be accessed by code and key-controlled elevator and or by teleporting into by a psychic type. I mean, Jesus Christ, Chris is giving you like a whole bunch of dates that I cannot keep up with because we're going from 1980 to 2003 to 93 to 95 to 95 to 95 again. And I guess my main takeaway is that Chris wants you to know these were not normal go-karts. Don't even think that they were. I think what he's referencing here is back in the day, he used to have these little races he would create with his Game Boy camera. And of course, Chris always won every single one of these races against people like, Mario and Peach and Cole Smithy, his brother. It was all fucking wacky, but Chris was always the big winner in the end. And I think that's what he's talking about here, those great races they had in the 90s to stop Crash Dummy or whoever. We have our various teams to defend depending on the severity of the offenses and size. Megatron/Galvatron had attempted to harness energy from Quickville's resources and Sonichus and Rosechus a few times and was thwarted and repelled by Sonichu, Chris's fucking car, of course. Of course. And his team with backup. Even a number of attacks by piloted vehicons of Walsh and Graduon The Pokemon and the tank-level threats in Team Rocket, and Robotnik's mechanical oversized menaces could not stand easily against Quickville's Autobots and Power Rangers, the Sonichus, Rosechus, and Pokemon of the Psychic Squadron, and the Special Sonichus and Rosechus of the city Quickville, Virginia. My God, what a story! This part makes you feel like you're reading an old-school Sonichu comic. Chris is referencing everyone from the top on down. Mary Lee Walsh, I mean, that woman has been in his lore for almost like 25 years now, which is crazy to think. Sanchu, his car, I didn't know he was still around, but he is. And they're all working together to stop the evil forces of Graduan, Robotnik, Mary Lee Walsh, all the classic villains. But here's the story of our Cybertronian team on Cybertron in our Universe 1C211987. The wars between the Autobots and Decepticons with the Allied Guardians and Renegades of the lost planet of Gabatron on Cybertron as well did wage on from time to time, and their war had reached Earth time and again, as chronicled in Generation 1 and updated over the years. Are you guys following along? Like Gabatron and the Cybertronians? Like, come on now, this is all easy stuff to understand. I'm gonna be honest, I don't understand a goddamn thing I'm reading right now. I think what the point of this video is gonna end up being is just a whole bunch of world building for Chris onto his Quickville universe, you know, the Cybertronians and all that. They're here, and not only here, but they're also on the lost planet of fucking Gabatron as well. And I bet you didn't know that before going into this video. Guarantee it. On Cybertron, there are creators and scientists who help make, heal, and restore their fellow bots, be they in the same alliance, different, or neutral. One Autobot that was manifested from Victor Sigma within Cybertron Primus that also had a direct link with this universe's core and matrix was a bright pink and blue female Autobot that started out with an alt form of a microscope, or the tank mode was an option as well as with that body type. So either a microscope or a tank. And with the way Chris words it, like, you know, it's another option with that body type. Like, he makes it sound like a normal thing. No, those two things are complete polar opposites. Moving on, who had awoken with the Avatar insights and foreknowledge, and from that dubbed herself after the one true Avatar of all existence with the name Chris Chan. Of course, it's fucking Chris. Chris Chan had developed and learned from her studies and meditations of Cybertron, her race, and the entire universe in her own spirituality with her spark. She had observed all mechanics of the other bots of various sizes, origins, combination abilities, Headmaster and Weapon Master, Minicons, Micromasters, Transactors, the Titan bots, Primus and Unicron, and so on. Did he mean to write unicorn right there? I don't know. The only thing I gathered from that is that the big hero at the end of the day, the main focal point of this story always has to come back to being Chris, and all the things that Chris is observing right there, you know, the Minicons, the Micromasters, the Titan bots, Primus, the bands of Chris is keeping a close eye on them. Chris is just, he's always watching, you know. That's the God in Chris. He's always watching, he's always there, and he's always going to make sure if you're being naughty or nice. So with that out of the way, let's get back to talking about Chris. Christian had developed her own unique technologies from her spiritual and multiversal explorations. It's just multiversal explorations. Like, Chris tries to make it sound like this big grand thing, and it's really just him zoning out in his bedroom, pretending to be flying around space with Sonichu and a bunch of Transformers. But moving on. Christian had developed her own unique technologies from her spiritual and multiversal explorations. There was a time when she had fatally fallen and was resurrected by the universe for universe where her self-counterpart there was a prime. She donned and possessed the matrix of leadership on behalf of Rodimus Prime. Fucking primes are there? Christian Prime was in an alternate universe that was slated to be lost and become avoided by will of a certain dark evil sorcerer there who had slain the one avatar there. When that universe was lost, so was Autobot Christian Prime. Or was she? Oh shit. Back on Cybertron in our Universe 1C211987, about 3 days after her fall, oh my god, Christian was alive and fully restored as she lived without any loss of memory or data. She had quite the souvenir clear in her core the matrix of leadership from the lost universe. Now she had become a Prime, while the matrix remained within Optimus Prime, and from her later creations, she created her life-giving partner, Runga, with the mythical energy from her matrix. I mean, are you guys hearing this? He's basically just giving the story of Jesus Christ, and on the third day he was resurrected, you know, this, and I love how he plays it off as, like, just some whatever thing, like, I even got a souvenir. Like, it sounds like you got one of those, like, oh, crucified, but at least I got this t-shirt, like, he went on a big roller coaster or something. The way Chris tries to play it off is his own resurrection story, and this was it. And apparently Rumgok was there too, so like that's pretty fucking cool. And Chris basically is telling you all this because this is how he became a Prime. And a Prime, I guess, is one of like the best, the cream of the crop. And of course, because Chris is Chris, Chris has to be the big kahuna in all his stories. He, of course, is one of the main Primes. And to note, all of that had transpired within the past over 1,000 Earth years, and at this point now, it had become within Earth's year 1739. So all this stuff Chris is talking about happened in the year 1739. Just keep up, guys. Come on. Continuing in her pursuits, she manifested and gave life to a number of other Autobots while also upgrading her fellow bots on Cybertron as well. She made and gave life to a yellow and blue Autobot, and upon completion she had a vision of Sonichu Prime from the Earth's future. She dubbed this Autobot Sanchu with glory and pride. So again, it's Chris's car. I guess the first the first son of God of Chris Chan Prime is his car, Sanju. Chris Chan Prime had appreciated her microscope and tank from an original body, but as a Prime, she felt it was time for an upgrade of her own. So, with Rungop's help, she created a transector that took the form of a lovely, stylish sports race car and created the body to migrate her head onto. And Chris Chan Prime became a headmaster. You get it? You get it? But she didn't stop there, for she also gave her new body combiner limb compatibility and form, so she can better and actively help her team. She still has her original body reformed into a transector, but her choice weapon remains her scope cannon. So, I mean, we're getting the biology here of Sanju. The fact that, like, now she's a race car. It's also a she now, did not know that. But I'll be honest, after reading all this, I didn't know that Sanju played such an integral part into Chris's, like, intergalactic universal story here. I really thought Sanju was just Chris's car and nothing more, but apparently I was completely wrong. Chris Chan Prime had bested the Decepticons, including Shockwave, Megatron, and Galvatron, time and again, alone and alongside her team, as well as Optimus and Rodimus themselves. Maybe Rodimus is an actual Transformer. I didn't watch it much as a kid, so forgive me if I'm a bit, like, ignorant on that fact, but, like, the way Chris describes it is, yeah, you know, sometimes they were there, but most of the time he could have done it alone. Like, he could take down all these guys. He's always besting the Decepticons, because good always prevails over evil. It's a story as old as time, and it's a story that remains true in Chris's universe, always. Now, Autobot Sanchu, since his creation and spark-given activation by Chris Chan Prime and Rungop, he learned of the history and the future from his creator and fellow Autobot, and Sanchu enlisted for combat training with Chris Chan Prime taking part as well. They met and became friends with fellow Autobots. Long before becoming the manager for World of T-Shirts, help! Mr. Bass spent half a decade in prison for running an escort business that supposedly supplied the governor of New York.
How did the governor think he was going to keep this quiet? You had the governor as a client. You would give him freebies because then you have him by the balls, right?
Yeah, ever since, he's been legally walking on the ice.
I have a backstory and a lore. All you guys have just done internet crap.
From doing crypto rug pulls, harassing women on stream,
No, I didn't do it on purpose.
and allegedly being involved in a woman's death.
I had a roommate named Zoltan who was with this chick because she wants some GHB. I woke up on the floor with vomit all over me, with Zoltan telling me that the girl was...
But how did we get here? Jason Lou Bell Itzler was born on February 23, 1967, to a
a Jewish family in New Jersey. His mom, Ronnie Lou Bell, was a fashion designer, and his birth father, Leonard Silk, was a businessman. But after she met Jason, Ronnie divorced him and remarried a man named Ron, a big shot attorney, who eventually gave Jason his last name. Very little is known about Jason's early life, besides the fact that he had an obsession with sex, sending letters to Mad Magazine asking them to publish recordings of teenage girls climaxing, which they obviously didn't do. Jason claimed that this obsession of his started because his mom was, and I quote, the hottest woman in the world, which motivated him to be surrounded by beautiful women. Obviously, that's a weird comment to make about your mom, but regardless, this obsession eventually turned into ambition, working in the sex industry. Partially, this ambition was influenced by his maternal grandfather, Nathan Bell, a bookmaker with ties to organized crime, who owned a chain of amusement parks and hat stores. Seeing how entrenched his grandpa was in what he called the action really motivated Jason to become an entrepreneur himself. And soon enough, he found himself working as a van employee at the Concord Hotel, where he befriended Jason Lim, a man who published magazines like The Hamptons and Los Angeles Confidential. Being acquainted with so many millionaires and even billionaires, Jason was enamored with their lifestyle. And while he floated between a couple of different law schools, he decided to start his first ever business, a phone sex company. His business model was quite simple. First, he advertised his services as a free live call, but the catch was after a minute, a $4.98 a minute charge began rolling, meaning that any caller that wasn't an expert at flicker booting would end up forking over a decent amount of money. To say that this was profitable is a giant understatement. Jason quickly earned himself the title of the phone sex king of South Beach, raking in $600,000 a month, which, as insane as it is by itself, actually turned into even more, at $1.5 million per month within 1 year. But easy come and easy go, Jason's spending habits quickly spun out of control, with him buying luxury cars and spending up to $500,000 decorating his one-bedroom apartment, as he financially spun his wheels in the mud when tragedy struck. His mother, whom he was still very close with at the time, passed away from cancer in 1994. 3 years later, his phone sex company fell apart due to an unspecified reason that he simply described as an oversight, which concluded in him filing for bankruptcy and losing everything he had, including perhaps the greatest tragedy of all, losing ownership of the domain pussy.com. Because of the complete failure of his company, he ended up owing $4.5 million at 36% interest to lenders. As a consequence of the debt and the loss of his mother, Jason unfortunately tried to take his own life twice. Once with a steak knife, and the other time by taking 150 sleeping pills at once and chasing it down with some scotch. Without his money, things were looking pretty dire. Jason's mother was gone, and he faced a mountain of debt that seemed extremely impossible to climb out of. But in the year 2000, he decided to make his comeback to the sex industry via a cam girl company, and once again, his eyes were bigger than his stomach, as he proceeded to rent out an 8,000 square foot corner building in New York. He went as far as to name his company Soho Models to lure in unsuspecting young women, presenting it as a more legitimate modeling business, only to later reveal what they had actually been doing. Unsurprisingly, this also fell apart, and at one point Jason recalled finding himself dangling over the side of a building, held by the ankles by a guy named Mikey P. It's uncertain to what extent this little tidbit is true, but given how closely these kinds of businesses are to organized crime, it's probably true. Becoming disillusioned with the industry at the time, Jason decided to clean up his act, go to college, and actually turn his life around. Just kidding. Instead, he decided to pursue another career path, drug trafficking. According to him, he was friends with some Israeli ecstasy dealers at the time, and one day they tried to recruit him. He was asked to carry somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 pills through customs for a payout of $30,000. And while he was initially hesitant to agree to it, he not only took them up on the offer, but he also convinced them to let him smuggle even more pills. To his surprise, he actually got through customs. And after the job was done successfully, he got paid and kept some 3,000 pills for himself as a bonus for the giant risk he just took. And just like that, Jason was hooked, and he wanted to keep doing it. A couple of years later, he found himself on a plane from Amsterdam to New Jersey with 4,000 tablets of ecstasy on his body, but as soon as he landed, he was caught and sentenced to 5 years in prison. Now, prison can obviously be a pretty scary place, and Jason was completely terrified of the prospect of going. So he decided that the next best course of action was to pretend he was insane. This involved doing things like spinning around for hours on end, and while that did pale in comparison to what other fakers were doing,
One guy that got through his phone took a toothpick and stuck it all the way in his dick. And it's like, that's all you have to do, days. I do this every day. Keep going to medical and telling him it hurts. I'm so sorry. He got right through it. They said he's whacked.
Jason successfully got himself sent to a correctional facility for mentally ill people. However, he only stayed there for a month, at which point they figured out he was faking it and sent him to prison in New York, where he proceeded to bounce around through a series of different lockups since people had the tendency to want to kill him after spending a little time with him. I'm not really sure what that's about. He should have done the toothpick thing. As you can probably gather, his time in prison was far from pleasant, and he was especially upset that his grandfather, whom he saw as a gangster, didn't approve of his behavior and cut contact with him during the time he was locked up. But fortunately for him, after 17 months, Jason was released on probation and immediately got to working on his next business idea, New York Confidential, a high-class escort business. But the twist, that Jason would only hire women who had never worked in the sex industry before, so that he could provide the ideal girlfriend experience. At first, it seemed like this idea wouldn't go anywhere. Jason wasn't having immediate success. But then, a girl called Natalia signed up and instantly became the face of the company. He started promoting her using a website called eroticreview.com, where he ensured she got an endless sea of 10 out of 10 reviews. If anyone were to rate her any less, Jason personally contacted them, made them an offer,